because the same way they pay others, they could pay us if they want some marketing.
That's right.
All right. Let's record.
Okay, it says now streaming live.
All right. So, let's wait for my picture. Okay. All right. Let me see.
It's live.
Okay. 5, 4, 3. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first Zoom edition of Showtime TV. It's lots going on in society. So this show is called Black Men Are Being Killed. And I have starting off with two special guests. I have Brian Allen, who's a community activist, former police officer, and I have Lorenzo Hopkins, who's also a community activist. He has his own talk show. Gentlemen, good evening. How are you both?
Hey, outstanding, brother. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Let's start off with Brian. You know, when you first heard or saw the situation on the news, what was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction was, go again. You know, if you think about it, this has been going on for many decades. So I just wanted to hear the details behind it. I talked to someone the other day about it, and they had mentioned that before knowing that it was a white officer, they wanted to know, they were hoping and praying that it was not, right? Because sometimes you just want to hear a different narrative, but same old story.
Right. Lorenzo?
Well, me being in law enforcement for over 27 years, man, I was heartbroken because you got to understand the reason I went into the business or the profession. That was to dismantle anti-Blackness in law enforcement.
Right.
And when I heard it, I'm like, how much can we endure? Because it seems to happen over and over again. And every time what happens, we protest, we march, and there's never any significant change. And when people continue to holler about training and training, no, it's really not training. We have some of the best trained people, law enforcement people, and best equipped in the world. The issue is their lack of consequences. If you hold people accountable, people's behavior changes.
Right. It's exactly. You know, oh man, it seemed like, wow, you know, you had Freddie Gray, you had Trayvon Martin, you had Rodney King back in 1992. I mean, and even before that, I mean, before we were all born, and if you look at the 60s and in the 50s, you had situations going on back then. Brian, and then we protest and we demonstrate, but it just seems as though every so often cases like this occur, and we're back to the drawing board again. So let me just ask point blank, both of you both. Does protests and demonstrations work?
You want to go, Brian?
Yeah, I'll go. So for me, I don't think it works, right?
Okay.
Personally, I don't think it works. When you talk about the community and law enforcement, right, especially in the African-American community, there's always a challenge between law enforcement and the community. And in my opinion, one of the ways that you can help reduce that challenge is by hiring more people from the community, right? Because I know when I would show up to a traffic stop or any type of incident,
Right.
automatically got reduced because I'm from here, right? I probably went to school with one, you know, your son, or I trained your son, or my daughter knows your daughter, or my mom knows your mom. Somehow, some way, you know me, and I know I can resolve the issue. But you have people in some of these departments, they're not from here. They don't want to be from here. I know as far as the agency I worked for, you only had to live in that area for 5 years. And then after that, you can live wherever you wanted to. And people couldn't wait until their 5 years was up, because I can treat you however I want to, because guess what? I'm not going to see you at the grocery store when I get off. I'm not going to see you at the barbershop, you know, so I'll treat you however I want to treat you. So for me, and again, I know that's not necessarily what you asked, but I always like to get right to, well, what's one of the ways that we can help reduce that challenge? And again, I just really feel like you got to hire more people from the community to be law enforcement officers. And you got to have African American law enforcement officers that are trying to promote that to some of our young people.
Right.
And I believe it does work. The problem, the failure with it has been always been the lack of follow up.
Okay.
You can't protest, but don't plan to come out and vote in masses where you're because again, the police chief in most localities report to the serve at discretion of the mayor. We are the mayor's boss. We can recall a mayor. We put them in. We can recall them. We vote in numbers. We also have to, like Mr. Allen just said, we have to start getting out on the streets and letting our young people know there's nothing wrong with being in law enforcement. We need you in law enforcement because I'm going to tell you, being in the room often, being sometimes I work on the federal level now, being a person in the room, the conversation changes because I'm actually in the room. Some of the crap that goes on don't get said around me, don't get done around me. People are looking around like, oh, because let's be honest with you. With I'm gonna be honest with you. Bad cops don't do bad things around people when they know they don't play that stuff.
Right.
They would do everything they can to be out of that person's sight. I don't want to deal with you because you're pretty much ostracized anyway, if you think about it. So the protesting is one part of a multifaceted approach that we must take. Simply protesting for the sake of protesting gets you nowhere. However, when that protest is followed up by a litany of other strategic planning processes, such as massive voter turnout and all those things, I think we fall asleep too much when it comes to local elections. Yes, you can vote for the national election, but local elections, if you ask anyone, can tell you the things that impact you readily are happening at local elections. For example, if you live in the city of Wilmington, that council and state government, those are the people when you put them there, they're going to set the rates on your on everything in your community. They're going to talk about who the police chief is going to be. They're going to talk about your picking up your garbage. They're going to talk about educating your children. So all of those things are important. We fall short because I think we get lulled to sleep by thinking, wow, we did our job. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. We have to continue to press, and we can't fall asleep at the wheel thinking, oh, things have changed. We did our part. No, you must continue.
No, I'm gonna go back. Okay, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
Something I just wanted to add to that too. And, just you guys just give me your honest opinion on it is I feel like when you think of protests, you only think of the African-American community, right? So, I mean, I can't think of any other race or culture that protests as much as we do, right? And my thing is, you do have some cultures, right, or some races. I'm not saying that they're going to go through what we're going through, right? But they have their challenges. So how are they dealing with it, right? And the majority of them is, hey, we're going to build up our finances. We're going to build up family wealth. We're going to put people in position to make decisions so that we don't have to endure that. But again, when you think of a protest, if you ask anybody, the first race that's going to come to mind is us. But other things going on with other races, and what are they doing, right? You think of the Jewish community, there were some things that happened to them, right? That were not, it wasn't good. But what did they do? They all banded together. I had a friend of mine that told me that he goes to and forgive me if I'm wrong with the terminology, but I believe it's a bar mitzvah that Jewish young boys have like around 13. And they said that during that bar mitzvah, let's say if it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, they get reminded for about 20 to like 45 minutes of the Holocaust, right? And how important it is for them to make good decisions, choose a wife, financial independence, sure you're creating you have your own business. They're reminded of that all the time, right? So again, you think of protests, you think of us. There's some bad things that have happened to some other races too and some other cultures. And my thing is, well, what are they doing, right? Do we band together? Do we support Black-owned businesses? And I know we have some people that will, but then you got a lot of people that, man, really just don't care.
And I agree. But what I would add is that people who know teach. And sometimes we have to bring some people along slower than others. But again, that's part of that multifaceted plan I talked about. you just can't simply protest for protesting, but you have to talk about and educate on economic responsibility. You have to talk about supporting. Not only it's easy to open a business, the issue is keeping it open and sustaining it.
Right.
We can't be so emotionally drained when it give other people passes. But when if Brother Allen slights me if I'm going to his business, the one time instead of dialogue with him, I'm gonna pass a bad word out him and say don't patronize his establishment.
Right.
That does us no good, because the way you build wealth is through business and through opportunity. When Mr. Allen has his business going, he makes it and he go, okay, let me reach back. How do you do that? Then you start bringing other people along. And the worst thing I hear people always say is there's no money. You can't make money in the hood. We the only people say that. Asian people don't say that. The shop owner don't say that. The bodega on the corner, I guarantee you that. We say that. We have $1.3 trillion of spending power in this country. It's not a mistake why they put P. Diddy on Lincoln Continental commercials in Ciroc.
But we look at the African American community. Other people who are not saying that you can't make money. Other cultures have been coming to the African American community, have been rather successful. So it must work for somebody.
Right, but you hear us say, I'm not opening my business down in Southeast DC or somewhere. I'm not doing that.
Right.
But again, the problem is if you get in while things are kind of bad, when things are starting to doing well again, guess what? You're already in place. You're already established. And I think it's critically important for our young people to see that, because you need something to aspire to and lift them up and go, hey, there's a different life. You see me, you come in my shop, I treat you with respect. I'm gonna teach you how to hustle the right way.
Right. Okay, I want to go back to we'll touch base again on the protests and ask some more questions about that. But I want to go back to both of you have experience in law enforcement. Being here in the city of Wilmington, one of the things that I've noticed, and I peeped this out, maybe about a year ago. And Brian, you worked in the city of Wilmington Police Department. I want to ask this honest question: are police officers, or you guys, when you were partners, I tend to see African American police officers partner with one another, and whites partner with one another. I mean, is that how it is, or that's just a few?
So in my opinion, I'll just give my quick response to that. So being in the police department is no different than, if you're in middle school or you're in high school and you're at the lunch table.
Okay.
What happens? It's like it's a natural thing.
Right.
Omar, remember, you and I were in that YWCA
study circle, right?
Dialogue circle. I mean, we kind of naturally gravitated to one another.
Right.
And I feel like, man, that's okay, right? I'm all for cultural pride, right? And if I feel more comfortable with you, that's cool, as long as I'm not disrespecting somebody else.
Right.
But as far as in the city of Wilmington, my experience has been, you can request to ride with whoever you want to ride with. I know some officers, a Caucasian male officer that rode with a, African American female officer, right? But it's really, however you choose to do it.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you guys not assigned to be with partners?
No. You can always request. So I can request, to ride with Mr. Omar, right? So if we're in the same district, we're on the same platoon, I can make a request that, hey, we want to ride together. And if our platoon is able to do it, our supervisor will make it happen.
Right.
And also you have to understand, Omar, is this in a field such as law enforcement, you depend on that person riding with you. And if I don't trust you, if I have any doubt about you,
right,
I'm not taking you into what I need to do. I'm just not. And I think that's what happens when you dialogue and you get to know people. You get to trust them. Their ability. That this brother, if things happen to go south, they're not going to leave you. Number two, that person is not a fool and go out there and start a lot of ish and let the stuff kick off. They're going to be level-headed. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Because the worst thing that happen is you have a person that's rolling with you that start more stuff that you end up fighting at the end of the night every night. You want somebody though, okay, I know this person can calm and level-headed, so if they're going to try to de-escalate, they're going to do this, but when it's time to get physical, if we have to, that person's going to be there. I can't say that about people I don't know, to be honest with you. So you'll find most people who went through any academy together, they build those relationships, and you'll start to see, I knew who that is, but I don't know you.
Right. Got you.
Not personal. It's survival. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Well, one of the issues in terms of being an African American man, and we have this complaint that in particular white officers lack cultural sensitivity when we're being racially profiled. And this is why I think that when you had cases like Rodney King, you had cases like George Lloyd, Mr. Lloyd, which just happened a couple of weeks ago. It's this attitude that the white officers have that black men are criminals. So in law enforcement, I mean, are there cultural sensitivity classes? Are there ethnic classes? I mean, are these officers being trained to be respectful and not be judgmental towards African American men? I don't know. Go ahead, Brian.
Let me say this real quick, Brian, if you mind.
Oh, okay.
The Omar, the thing is this: there are good white officers.
Right.
So I want to start there. Secondly, law enforcement, the police departments, law enforcement are subcultures of society. In any subculture, you got parts of the main body. Mm-hmm. If you got racists in the regular society, you got racists in the police department, right? If you got people with anger issues in society, all those things fit in there, okay? So it's not a matter, to me, of cultural training. People always use more training, yes. The issue is when I still give you training and based on whatever your work mindset is, that you're going to still do it your way because your biases, because we all have biases. The problem is when you let those biases impact your decisions without, because I have bias and I'm like, would I do this to this person if they were of a different hue? Right. Same thing with judges. Everybody got bias. It's okay to have biases. The problem is, can you check that bias and put it in check and go, I'm going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. The problem is people overstep the line because they feel they can get away with it because all I got to do is say a narrative that I feared for my life, I was in danger and things of that nature. So the training is fine, but we have to make sure people are applying that on the streets.
Okay.
I would add to that, right? The first question that you have to ask most people that are in law enforcement is, why are you there?
Yes.
Right? Because you may not even be there for the right reason. So your reason to being there might be, man, my uncle was a cop. Man, I heard they got good benefits, job security.
Right.
Right. And if I'll challenge anybody that's listening, the next time you see a police officer and you feel safe, ask that police officer, hey, what's the mission statement of your department? Right. So I know Wilmington had made some changes to theirs, but in the nutshell, it is to work in a true partnership with the citizens of Wilmington, raise the level of public safety through law enforcement, which will thereby reduce the fear and incident of crime. Right. So that's kind of like, that's on my heart. So I don't have it up on the screen. I didn't just read that, off a sheet. It's on my heart because every day, to the best of my ability, I tried to make sure that any decision that I made was based off of that mission statement. And anytime I had someone that did something a little bit different, I would say, hey, well, what does that mission statement mean to you? What does working in a true partnership mean to you? How do you define true? How do you define partnership? Right. And I'll explain how I defined it. I defined it as I treat the law abiding the same way I treat the non-law abiding. Right. So everybody just gets respect. Right. So, and Mr. Lorenzo, I'm sure you've either heard, seen, officers putting on the handcuffs tight.
Yep.
Like such and such, he deserves it. I'm gonna put his handcuffs on tight. It's 90 degrees outside, a heat wave. You got them in the back seat. You keep the windows up, right? You don't got the air conditioner on. It's like, man, I wouldn't do that to anybody. And
right. Go ahead. And that's personal, and that's the issue. Right. This is a career. It's not your personal vendetta army, and that's why it's important. Like Mr. Alleyne said, is to have people of color in these positions. I've been on Facebook. If you've seen, people were saying, why would anyone want to join law enforcement? Because let me say something. You can yell and scream all you want from the outside, but in a way to effectuate changes from the inside. I'm telling you right now, as I rose up the ranks in the leadership position I am now on the federal level, there's certain things that I control. And I control the people I need to let go, the people I keep, the people I hire, the people that need more training, all of those things. Because to me, leaders set the standard. Right. If people know that they can get away with stuff because the leader is not going to do anything, they're going to do it, especially people who have shady means or shady motives.
Right.
You know, on the same line, one of my favorite movies of all time is Boys in the Hood. I want to take you both to a scene that is similar to what happened to Mr. George Lloyd. There was a scene where Ricky and I'm sorry, yeah, Ricky and Trey. They were driving. They went to this little party, and they were driving home, and they get stopped by the two police officers, one African American and one white. African American police officer was very nasty. He collared up Ricky, saying some nasty things to Ricky, while the white police officer just stood there and said nothing. Now, if you look at the George Lloyd's case, when the officer had his knee on his neck, the other officer just stood by. So let me just ask this point blank. I was thinking to myself, is there a code of conduct that officers don't intervene when they see their fellow brothers doing something wrong? Is that considered disrespectful? I mean, because they just stood there. None of them stepped up and say, "Hey, man, stop." He said he can't breathe.
I call it being cowardly.
Okay.
There's nothing in your oath that say to allow someone to harm someone necessarily. The problem is people treat this stuff like a social club. Like, I don't want to say anything to my friend. And I'm going to tell you, like I tell everybody, I don't cut card with people. I don't take up for my profession if it's unwarranted. People who stand by and watch things like that happen are not good cops. Good cops don't let ish like that happen. I'm being honest with you.
Right.
And people say, well, it's funny, good cops are never around. I'm telling you, and Mr. Allen probably can tell you, bad cops don't do that stuff around good people because they know you're going to say something. I'm telling you right now. You're going to say, hey, man, we don't do that. Because guess what we know? You just made it bad on me for whenever I go back to whatever neighborhood I'm going to.
Okay. Brian, you want to chime in?
I mean, it's all on point, man. And just to add to that again, when I always think about the mission statement, you think of, and I know we're specifically talking about law enforcement, but when you think of any career, right, any organization, there's always a disconnect between the mission statement and the culture, right? So the reason why those other officers, Mr. Lorenzo, let me know if I'm right or not. There's a reason why those other officers didn't do anything, because that's the culture.
It was normal. It was acceptable. They, you know what? Minnesota has been there. This is not the first time this has happened.
Right. Exactly.
You know, so it's normal. Remember, before the Obama administration left, Minnesota was one of those departments on the consent decree that got pulled back by the Trump administration. The same thing with Ferguson. The consent decree says, hey, you got to make changes. The new chief was hired as part of the consent decree. He's new. So see what happens when you do things and move people? Because what he did was a smart thing. Was he trying to work to change the culture? I don't know him personally. But as soon as it came out, did he say, you know what, I need to fire him? What typically happens is you circle the wagons around the troops, the FOP gets involved, the department get involved, and you start putting out the bad stuff about the person who's dead. That's what happens. But with this new guy, at least he had the courage to go, you got to go. The problem I have, though, is this guy had 18 complaints in 19 years. Wow. And I always say, if you had 18 citizen complaints in 19 years that were documented, you had 18 plus that weren't.
Right.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You know, I one of my Facebook friends had a post that says, coronavirus is killing us, police are killing us, and we're killing us. So let's talk about the black, quote unquote, black on black crime, because it seems like in almost every on a regular basis for years, we've been killing one another. So, and there are those who say that, you know, we as African Americans, we march and protest when a white kill a black, but when it's black on black, where's the protest?
Let me educate those fools on that, okay? Let me educate them on that.
Okay.
First things first. Black on black crime was coined to minimize other crime, other police on black crime, and all those things, okay? Black on black crime is real. So is white on white crime. So is Asian on Asian crime. Latino on, know why? Because crime and murder are proximal, and they happen to intercultural. For example, 85% of the white people that are killed by other white people, but no one says white on white crime.
Right, right.
right? So when you see us at 85, 90% killed by other black people, that's no different than anybody else. But people will pull that out to somehow justify, right? To justify what happens. The second point I have to say is this. Stop when people say black people don't care. It's not true. I know people in the city of Wilmington. I know people in DC. I know people in Chicago that are and any major Baltimore that are marching hard and fighting hard to change the conditions and stopping crime in those cities every day. That's their life. They volunteer to do so, right?
Right.
But it's not national because those crimes are local to that jurisdiction. It impacts that community. Police on black violence impacts everybody. I'm not making excuses for it. I'm just preaching facts here. Right. That black on black crime will happen because people kill people that stay close to them in their neighborhood and that look like them. That's the fact of the matter. Do we need to work on that? Yeah, we do. But for people to say black people don't care about black people kill black, that's not true. I spend my every working day getting calls and going to stuff and a lot of us in the district to try to stop this crime. It's not because we don't care. Have you ever heard of a national movement to stop black on black crime or white on white crime? There isn't one. You know why? Because people do in Chicago got their thing, DC got their thing, Baltimore got their thing. But everyone can relate when a police officer kills because guess what? We're sworn to do a duty and not to abuse people.
Right.
Let's not get it twisted. It's different. And guess what? When Ray killed Pookie, Ray going to jail for a long time. Mm-hmm. When a police officer typically kills, you get administrative leave because you discharge your weapon, and a small percentage may go to prison. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard in law enforcement. I don't care what anybody says. You took an oath. You were trained. I'm sorry, Mr. Allen. I sort of ramble on a little bit.
You hit all the points. Just to kind of echo what you were saying, and I'll be brief with it, there's just a higher expectation with law enforcement, right? Preservation of life. At first, I used to agree with the statement that you originally said. I used to agree.
Me too. Yep.
I can't remember which unarmed African-American male that was killed some years ago, but I heard a protester say that. The protester was like, listen, I think the reporter had mentioned the same thing, like, well, there's, you got black on black crime. So, why is this any different? And he was like, yo, it's a higher expectation. It's a higher expectation for law enforcement officers. They took an oath that they were going to try to protect me. And when I see something like that, I don't feel protected.
And check this out, man. Let's be real about it. You know, I know it's not simply training because I see too many incidences where people of different hues wild out in front of police and survive the altercation.
Yes.
I'm just going to be honest with you. I saw the boy walking to church. I saw a boy walking to church in Charleston and gunned down 9 people praying.
Right.
I saw the police take him safely in custody, buy him Burger King before they took him to jail. That's all I'm saying. If you can show restraint in one, you can show restraint in the other. And you're not going to tell me that man, I wasn't there, but I didn't look at the video, but I saw the stills and all those things because I refuse to watch the video, Omar, because when you deal with death every day on the job, I don't try to put that kind of trauma in me all the time. But I'm going to tell you, with 2 men on one on the lower, one on the mid, and one on his neck for 8 or 9 minutes.
Yes. That's
uncalled for, man.
Terrible, yeah.
I don't care who you are. It's uncalled for.
Right. That's definitely trauma. Also hear people expressing, well, particularly females, but I really haven't heard too many males post this or say this, but there are a lot of mothers who said that they fear for the lives of their black son, their African American son. So as fathers, or just yourselves, as you as African American men, black men, whatever terms you want to use, do you fear your own safety as a black man, and do you fear the safety of maybe your son or your nephew simply because he's an African American black male?
Let me tell you this, and I shared it before. I don't know if people listening to my show heard this before.
Okay.
I'm more concerned at dying at the hands of another law enforcement officer when I'm in plain clothes, riding around the neighborhood and fitting the profile than I am being in some of the roughest streets of DC. You know why? Because I've been stopped at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning in the back roads of Maryland going to DC.
Wow.
With guns pulled on me. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you could ask, and I'm not, people say, oh, you're making it up. Okay. Tell that to the officer from PG County when the guys went up and shot up the police department. He came to help as an officer in plain clothes. He got gunned down by fellow officers. Tell that to the New York City officer who was chasing a suspect to only be gunned down by other New York City police officers. You understand what I'm saying? Because what people see is that black skin before the badge. My 20-year-old son is soon to be 21. Every time he leaves the house, I'm prayerful and I'm like, man, give me a call when you get there. Let me know you good. I think one night he went out and he didn't call, and I'm texting him like, yo, son, where you at? Oh,
Right.
Dad, I stopped at a girl house up the street. Okay, but call me. I'm good with that, but call me, because at that point, I don't go to sleep when my son is out. I don't care if he's almost a grown man or not. It's as simple as that, Omar.
Right.
And yes, I'm concerned because what I don't want to happen, because my son doesn't bother anybody. But I could see one of these asshole police officers, not all, but some, giving him a hard time. He gets nervous and things go south from there. So when I talked to him before, I've been talking to him for years. Don't give him a hard time. Do what you're supposed to do. You get to where they take you. Say, I need to make a call, and you call your father.
Right. Okay, Brian?
I'll echo the same thing. So no, for me, I can remember being stopped while I was a police officer, and I want to say I was in uniform, but I might have been in my personal vehicle coming from an event in Lower Delaware, and it was maybe like 10 o'clock at night. What I did was, when I pulled over, I put all my windows down.
Yep.
The car in park. I took the key out of the ignition. I put it on top of the hood, and I put both of my hands out I put my interior lights on, and I put both my hands out the window. Right? Because as that officer is approaching the car, that officer doesn't know what's going on in the car, right? And just the same way that we're scared and we get nervous, they're scared, they're nervous.
And some of them are overly scared.
The same way that we're watching all of these videos, they're watching videos too. I mean, you also got videos of, I can think of two, they always stick in my head that I saw in the police academy. There was one from like the 80s where an officer stopped a guy on the highway, and you know how officers normally approach on the driver's side, but because it was the highway, they approach from the passenger side.
Right.
Guy got to the back quarter panel. The driver turned around, put out a gun, bop, bop, shot him in the head, and pulled off. Right? So you have officers watching that stuff all the time. So they're walking to that car scared. Right? And what I want to do, I want to reduce, and this is what I tell my kids too, you want to reduce that threat indicator. Right?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that when that officer is walking to the car, they have to think like, hold up, this cat must know something because he being extra.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, my dome light is on. My badge is on the dashboard. I'm not lying to you.
Yeah. He took the key out of the ignition and put the key on top of and put his hands out.
Right. And they don't see that regularly.
And they don't. And you know what's funny, man? Every time I think of that story, I think of an officer, a colleague of mine, that someone did that. And she was like, yo, what the F is up with this person?
Right.
I was like, isn't
survival.
Yeah, but isn't that what you want them to do? Don't you feel
Yeah.
a little bit more relaxed walking to that car?
He's not gonna run over me because the keys are on the top.
And there's so many things, and Mr. Lorenzo, you understand, there's so many things that people do that they don't look at it as a big deal. But with the experience that you have as an officer, it's a big deal. If I'm walking to a car and the car is still running and the person still got their foot on the brake, the first thing that comes to my head, because this is what I've dealt with, man, as soon as I get close to the car, they're gonna pull off.
Right. But let me ask you, when the officer went to your car, and I assume you informed him that you was a police officer, what was his reaction? His or her reaction? It might have been female.
The reaction was a little different, but I'm gonna give you another time. So, at that time, I wasn't sure how they were going to take me because I want to say it was around October, right? So I didn't want them to think I was dressing up as a police officer. I'm like, yo, I'm really a police
right, Halloween, right?
Right. That's another reason why I was just being extra about it, because I'm like, man, I don't know what this guy's going to think. Maybe he thinks I'm impersonating the cop. So let me just be extra careful. So there was another time when my wife and I got stopped again while I was a police officer. I'm off duty, and we got stopped like a few blocks from our house. So, and I'll be honest with you, and Mr. Lorenzo, I'm not sure how it was at your department, but in our department, as soon as you made contact with an officer, if you were being pulled over, you had to identify yourself as a cop.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I did was I was in the driver's seat, my wife was in the passenger seat. So I was also an FTO. An FTO is a field
Field
trainer.
trainer.
So yeah, so I've trained other officers before.
Okay, got you.
So I can tell in this situation, that's what it seemed to be. So I think the more seasoned, no, I want to say, sorry, the officer that was being trained approached on my wife's side. I think I approached on my wife's side, and I had the veteran officer. The seasoned officer says to my wife, how you guys afford this car?
Wow.
Right?
Profiling, huh?
At first, I didn't say anything, and I was like, "Oh, damn! Let me go ahead and shut it down now." How you doing, sir? Corporal Alleyne, Wilmington Department of Police. Can I talk to you for a second? Whole tone changes,
Oh, wow.
and you see how I look now, right? You see the scruffy face, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm like this, right? I love to dress in all black. I like to wear my Baltimore Ravens gear. That's how I dress when I'm not working. I don't wear, I don't wear collared shirts and khakis. Right. So if you look at me right now, you're not going to think associate's degree, bachelor's degree, married, master's degree, former police officer, blah, 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 so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to judge me just based off of how I look. But now when I open up my mouth, it's going to be a different story.
Right. Right.
I'm going to say, hey, well, what's your, section 1902 says. So can you explain to me why I was stopped, please? Right. Humbly and respectfully.
Right.
In that case, once I identified myself as an officer, the whole tone changed. But what I explained to the veteran officer and the field training officer was that, hey, man, it doesn't matter who you stopping, man. Just try to treat everybody with respect because you never know who you stopping.
Right.
Well, and also you never know who's going to save your life one day in that community.
Right.
Because I've been working a place before in the community to tell you, yeah, I don't want to be here today, bro.
Yeah.
I'm being honest with you. So, and the problem is, I don't know if you guys heard. You probably have Jane Elliott, the brown eye, blue eye experiment.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about people's experiences, the media. I'm not blaming the media because I'm not one of those people. But if you look at the images on the media, they rarely show pro-social black males. It's always the criminal. This, and that. So that conditioning continues over and over. And you see people all the time. I don't care who you are. If you're black, you've had someone lock the doors on your car when you walk by or when you're at the gas pump.
Right.
I don't want your stuff, but that's what happens. So we got to understand that piece of it too. And people have to be willing to learn. They have to be willing to come out of their comfort zone. And the worst thing we can do in law enforcement is create that us against them mentality.
Right. Brian, you've had a very significant role. Project New Start, and you're a mentor for young kids. You want to talk about your organization? What is it that you do?
Yeah. So right now I work for an organization called Project New Start. Project New Start is a reentry program. So we help people that are returning home from prison get jobs. We take them through a 10-week training where they learn financial literacy. We also have a section called Knowing Your Rights and Responsibilities, where we take people through various scenarios. In those scenarios, and again, this is just touching on the law enforcement part, in those various scenarios, we'll make our participants the police officers, and then I'll become the civilian. And we also have, partnerships with Wilmington Police. So we have some Wilmington officers that come through. We also have some Newcastle County officers that come through, but the officers become civilians, and the participants in the program become the officers, because we want you to know what it feels like to be in that situation.
Wow. And also what you're doing is you're bridging that gap. I do the same thing myself. This past fall, I went to Lincoln University and lectured and sat on a panel of how to bridging the gap between law enforcement and our communities. I don't do that because it was part of the job. I do it because I want understanding. I want people to know, one, what their rights are. I also want people to understand each other's perspective, because I think it's critically important, because I'm often told on social media, you know, you have people not long ago when this thing happened and questioning my loyalty to our people
Oh,
because you are in law enforcement. And did I flick off? Yeah, I flicked off, because until you can match my work in our community outside of my profession, I dare you to question me, because I'm a person. We did, like I said, we did a Save Our Sons event in Sussex County, my radio partner and I, where we brought the community together and talk about how we save our youth from prison and death and all those kind of things.
right.
We do a lot of giving back. We got to actually, we're trying to take a group of kids to the African American History Museum in Washington D.C.
Yes.
But when people say that, I think it's because they're mad and they don't understand. But you can be both. I don't think they understand the hell that people of color go through in law enforcement to be just, right? And then you go back to a community that sometimes underappreciate the struggle. Because I know some officers, a lot of really good people who went through hell in some of the local departments here based on not something bad, because they chose to speak up, and it was investigation after investigation after investigation. You understand what I'm saying? So when people criticize you as part of the community, I don't think they understand that you're fighting the battle. See, there's two types of people. There are spectators, and there are people who step in the ring. We're in the ring. We're in the ring fighting to dismantle anti-blackness in the police department, and you're outside yelling about it. But we're in the ring. We're experiencing it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with us. You know what I mean? We do the right thing. We're stand up people, but you're seen as an enemy because of your profession.
Yep, I'd agree.
Right. You said something significant, Lorenzo. You know, building trust in the community, police officers building trust in the community. Some people express the notion that it would be good if the police officers were to walk in the community, speak to the residents there, build a rapport. So maybe the relationship among the community police can be better. Brian, get your hands up. What do you say to that?
So what I would say to that is, right, I strongly believe that so in the city of Wilmington, and again, this is public information, I'm not giving any secrets, right? So you have to live in the city for at least 5 years,
Okay.
right? And then after that, you can live wherever you want to. And again, in my unique situation, so I originally had a house that was in the county, right?
Mm-hmm.
So which I kept, right? I kept my house in the county. I also had a condo that was in the city of Wilmington, because again, I already told you guys before this, I have a large family.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure if I was moving to the city, I got to find something that's comparable.
Enough room, right?
Yeah, enough room, because I got a large family. But I strongly believe that, man, I would make it mandatory, right? That you had to, for the duration of your career, you had to live in the city of Wilmington, right? Because if any one of you guys were the president of Honda and you look out, you know, on the parking lot and you see Chevys in your parking lot, what are you driving a Chevy for? Man, you work for Honda.
Right.
Right. And I would always say this, man. A lot of people, you know, apply to the big three, right? So you apply to the state, you apply to the county, you apply to Wilmington. A lot of people didn't get into the state, they ain't getting to the county, but Wilmington chose you, right? You said all your life you wanted to be a police officer, man, and Wilmington chose you. And there's a lot of stuff going on in Wilmington, so you have an opportunity to make a great impact on the city of Wilmington. Mm-hmm. And you got the nerve to, like, you know, treat the residents wrong, and then after their 5 years, you move out. And then again, you're treating people wrong because, you know, man, I ain't got to see you when I get off work. You know,
trust plus challenge equals change. Restorative justice. Trust plus challenge equals change.
Right. There you go.
If I don't trust you, you can't challenge me. That's almost like somebody coming to me going, man, I don't like the color of your beard. I'm like, well, you know, but if it's somebody, my wife or somebody I trust and know, oh, cool. Let me take a look at that. But right. if people don't trust you, you can't challenge them without them bucking off. When you look around the country now and you see those law enforcement agencies where they're not having the problem with the riots, they're having protests, but not the riots. Mm-hmm. You know why? And they talk about this guy, the police chief in Michigan and some other places, because they put the work in the beginning. The community trusts them. That's why they can go out there and take their shields off and walk in the protest with them. They didn't create an adversarial environment. They were open to hearing complaints, and not perfect, but they were open to hearing that. And that brought them some political capital when it came to the people. You don't look the same thing. If you're talking about saving our community, the same thing go with churches at times, right? You know how people, when things kick off in our community, people go get these leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the leader hasn't put any sweat equity and capital in that community, guess what? The people don't trust you. I don't care who you go. Your name could be the biggest reverend, whoever. But if you're not giving back to that community and not investing into that community, the people ain't gonna listen to you when things get hot. You got to do that before things get hot.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I was thinking a couple of days ago is a lot of these leaders, I'm not gonna say all, but a good number of leaders, both on a national level and local level, I don't think they have a relationship with the community. Number one, they don't live in the community. Number two, they live in the suburbs and they live very fine housing, nice cars. I mean, they speak on Black issues, but they how often do they come into the hood? And I think a lot of those leaders use public speaking, speak on Black issues, write books. I think it's more or less for a financial reason, as opposed to reaching out in the community, going in the hood, speaking to young men, telling them the significance of why it's important for us not to be killing one another, to support your woman, be a man, work, etc., etc., etc. I mean, I don't know if you two feel the same way, but I just don't think that there's a real connect among some of the well-known leaders that we have. I mean, we see them on TV, we see them speaking out, but I rarely see them in the hood or even protesting or demonstrating when issues get hot.
They speak to Black issues. They don't speak on them. The reason I say that is this: to be able to speak on Black issues, you have to be educated about what's going on. You have to listen to the people. The people will tell you what the concerns are. Some people can speak to Black issues because it's general, like, yeah, we know what's going on. But if you really want to know the pulse and know what you're speaking about the city of Wilmington or anywhere else, you have to ingrain yourself in that, because every city has this unique, DC is more different than Wilmington. DC is different than Chicago. You have to know the citizens, what make them tick, because you have to have boots on the ground. Because when you don't, it's a new generation, man. Back in the day when we were growing up, you just had respect. You have respect. Young people know when you're full of shit now, and they will tell you you're full of shit. I'm just being honest with you. Am I lying?
No.
Before you open your mouth, they know it.
And guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna say, "Man, I ain't trying to hear that." But if they know you a genuine and like, you know what, this dude, look, he don't promise me this. He did. I'm not talking about always giving people something. There are people in the prison right now, right? Mm-hmm. And what the prison got out because some action that either that I took or something. But you know what they do when they see me? Yo, man, I'm doing good. Here's my kid. Here's my wife. They don't do that if you cruddy, right? They do. They come to you and they happy, because when they ain't doing good, they turn their head. They walk their head. They don't try to fight you. They're just like, man, I don't want this dude to see me like this because he talked to me. Because the whole way I'm dealing with somebody, I'm talking to you, man. Look, bro, this ain't the end of your life. You know, you got to get it together. It's called building relationships. Because guess what? 9 times out of 10, most people don't go to jail for life. You're gonna see them again.
Right.
You're gonna see them again. And the next time, if it escalates to violence, they're gonna remember. You can be able to talk them now because they're like, you know what? Alleyne always did me here solid. Even though he did this, locked me up, put me in jail. Because I always tell people, I ain't do it. You did it yourself. I mean, I'm serious. You did that. You got to own that one. But what they do is they understand that, you know what? Yeah, I'm pissed. I was pissed off, but the dude, he treated me fair. And they'll look at you the next time and go, yo, Alleyne, I can't talk to you here, but let me holler at you a minute. How many times that happened to you? Let me holler at you a minute.
You absolutely right. And something I didn't mention is, so before becoming a police officer, I also worked at Ferris School for Boys,
Me too.
Center and Glenville schools.
I worked at Ferris
So
in 1993.
Was it up on 141 then?
Yep, it was on 141, the old Ferris, and then I was in charge of I got out of the Max building and went to Mo's Cottage out with Phil Bright. I was a supervisor there.
Yep, I remember Bright, but I'm sure you had the same experience there. Even if you had to restrain a kid, right? You might have other kids say, "Damn, man, what you do, man? Mr. Lorenzo had to put his hands on you, man. What
right,
you
right?
Yeah.
Yo, they'd be like, "Youngin, yo, nah, back up, man."
Yeah,
that dude don't be bothering nobody. He when he say do it, man. He ain't that. Come on, man.
That's right, and that's the same thing though in law enforcement, right? When you're policing the community, it's the same thing, right? Treating people with respect. I don't care where you come from. I don't care who your mom is. I don't care I don't care what you did yesterday. I don't care if it's an investigation going on with you.
Nope.
You a victim right now. I'm treating you like a victim. Yo, how can I help you? I'm here to serve you. How can I?
You know, I want to go back to the protesting. This past Saturday, there was a protest and demonstration held at Rodney Square. I was there. Started at 11 a.m. We had some guest speakers at Rodney Square. Then we marched to City County Building on 8th and French Street. From 8th and French Street, some marched to the police station where I went, and some marched. They went left, so I'm not sure where they went at. So it was rather well. It was no issues, no violence, anything of that nature. There, it was a, quote unquote a peaceful demonstration march. However, later on that evening, things took a turn. Downtown Market Street Mall, whoo, man, took a beating. People were busting them businesses, T-Mobile, jewelry store, Walgreens. I mean, they destroyed a lot of property on Market Street Mall as well as West 9th Street. Wow, Brian, and when we participate in demonstrations, talk about the significance, the importance of, because you're basically destroying businesses in your own community. People got to feed their families. They got to feed themselves. They got bills to pay, and now that their place of business is boarded up, they got to wait till they get insurance money. So in the meantime, where do they turn? So talk about the significance of not destroying businesses and things of that nature there. But it's not only happening in the city of Wilmington, Delaware. I mean, Washington, Philadelphia, Chicago, everywhere.
I mean, it just shows that there's a deeper issue, right? Because again, and this is slightly off topic, but I just want to make sure I mention this. I had a conversation with a friend. So that next morning, so this must have been Saturday morning. So he was talking about T-Mobile and he was talking about Starbucks, and he was like, man, F them, because, what have they done what have they done for the community? And then my rebuttal then was just, well, is that what they signed up for? Right? Did they sign up to be a voice for the community whenever an African-American male, an unarmed African-American male is killed by the police? Is that what they signed up for? I said, but more importantly, the ones that looted those businesses, right? So the hair stores, because I watched some of the videos, right? The hair stores, the sneaker stores, the T-Mobiles, they're going to go right back to and Al's, right?
Yeah, right. I got them.
One of the pillars in the community, right? They need Al's. But as soon as everything gets back to normal, the same individuals are going to be going right back there, right? They're going to be going right back to it. So, I mean, for me, I understand frustration. And, again, this goes way deeper than just that, because, I mean, America was built on violence, right? When we don't like what another country says, what we go do? We go handle it. We go call our military and we go handle it. So even though I would love to say, hey, man, that's not the way to go and we're tearing up our community, I mean, that's just who we are, right? That's who we are. That's what America is. And we're that big bad bully. Right. And when people start to do that, we'll say, yeah, that's wrong. And I get it. But then it's like, damn, man, well, look at your, look at your parent, look at the United States, look how they handle things. Look how the president handles things. Look how he says certain things. It's just, again, it's a deeper issue. We could talk about the Willie Lynch letters. We could talk about a whole, a lot. But at the end of the day, the same people, so the peaceful protesters, and the people that did the looting, two separate, right? Like how you may have in Islam, you have some people that do the holy war, and you have true Muslims that's like, that's not us. That's not what we're trying to do.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right. You're absolutely right, brother. Just slightly, and I agree. Just like let's take a step back for a second, right? Imagine if you're 16 now, but from the time you were 5, you saw your father beating your mother. You start going to school about 5.5, 6. You see your first serious assault in the community. By 8, you see your first dead body. By 10, it becomes commonplace. By 13, you're carrying a gun. Then you take that trauma and you pile on the stuff you see in your community, what the police brutality, you see all the murders around the country. And you take that and you stick it into a young body, right? I'm not talking about the 50-plus-year-old me. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about Omar. People who have never been taught to release stress and trauma it has to come out somewhere. And what typically happens, you hold in so much, things like this happen, you go buck wild, not justifying it, right? But what we need to teach young people is to how to deal with trauma and release, because a lot of young people are going to school with trauma and they label them as ADHD, they label them as oppositional defiance. And when you start labeling kids in school, by the time they're in high school, they've already typecast and pretty much some of them are going to drop out and all those things. I say that to say this. I don't condone it, but I kind of get it if you've never been taught how to release without turning to violence. But if I could say anything to those people looting, you're hustling backwards. What I mean by that, you're hustling backwards is this. Most of those businesses don't want to be there anyway. They're there because they could afford the rent, right? But if you destroy it and they get to come up with insurance, someone may not come back.
Right.
So then you got grandmama, right? Or mama. They got to go way out of her way on the bus line, catch 2 buses to get the stuff she typically get around the corner. So if you're not going to think about you, think about them. Because again, you look at some of those places, and I was out in LA not long ago where they had the Rodney King riots. I was in college during that time, or just about, I graduated. But by that time, if you went out there, you saw everything burned out. Now it's gentrified, it's back up, and all those kind of things. That's typically what happens when those places get destroyed like that. You people can't afford to live there anymore. They build it up. The rent goes sky high. The city doesn't become yours anymore. So I say all that to say is this. Kaepernick tried to do it peacefully, and I just wish people had listened. Because the same people saying this is not the way told Kaepernick is not the way. Right? That ain't the way. That you got to find another way to protest. But now some of the young people are wilding and buck. Now that's not the way. Could you imagine if you simply listened to dialogue from Colin instead of ostracizing him, that we probably could have avoided some of this stuff? Because he talked about some of the same stuff. He talked about trauma. He talked about police brutality. He talked about systematic racism. And all I'm saying is you don't get to victimize people and tell them how to respond to your victimization. Yes, it hurts them. Right? It hurts our communities. But you're dealing with a different mindset. I mean, and I'm not putting it on them because my generation failed them. We were busy trying to make a living and we forgot to take care of them. We forgot to bring them along. Those young people are saying, you slap me, I'm gonna slap you back. You hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you back. And I don't see you on the street, so I'm gonna tear your building up. I'm just being honest with you.
And Lorenzo, you just mentioned Kaepernick, and he's really stood for what he's believed in, and then which leads me to like professional athletes. Yeah, back in this time, you had Muhammad Ali who spoke out. You got LeBron James who speaks out. D.L. Huey, in terms of entertainers. Do you guys think it is responsibility of pro athletes and entertainers to speak out against the injustice that's going on among African Americans?
Yes.
Okay, that was easy.
You know why, chefs? All jokes aside. Because when they take that basketball uniform on and drive their car, they're still black. People see their hue. The same way that Mr. Allen and I just talked about it, the same way when you don't have a uniform or have something identifying you as a police officer, they see you as black. The same way when LeBron goes and takes his with his kids, somebody spray painting the N-word on his house, right? So we have an obligation to reach back and make things better. It's easy for certain athletes to speak out now because it's popular. I don't care about when it's easy. I want you to speak out when it's unpopular, like Kaepernick and them do.
Right. What are your thoughts, Brian?
So I have a few on those, right? Because I don't know if you guys remember when I think it was Charles Barkley that
ain't a role model.
Right. Talked about being. So I understand. It's almost like the T-Mobile thing. Like, hey, T-Mobile didn't sign up to do that. They just signed up to make some money.
Right.
Barkley just signed up. Hey, I just want to play basketball and make some money. I'm not trying to do. I get it. However, there's power in unity. Right. So if at some point it's going to touch you, right? And I know right now, I try to be involved in things that don't necessarily touch me, right? Because when it does touch me, I would like other people to be on my bandwagon, right? I'm doing it now. I can't expect for somebody to do something for me that I'm not willing to do for somebody else. The last point I'm gonna just make is there was, and I didn't even know about this, there's a a retired African-American tennis player. There's Blake somewhere in his name. I don't know if it's his first.
Yeah, I know it happened in New York in front. Yeah, yeah,
I didn't know anything about that.
yeah.
I didn't know he was an advocate, but he was just standing on his cell phone.
Yep.
An undercover officer runs up to him, tackles him, puts him in handcuff. Now, I didn't do the research on the entire story, but,
Right.
and again, Mr. Lorenzo, you got experience as a law enforcement officer. When you watch him, right, you normally watch the person that you're about to apprehend. I'm going to watch your movements. I'm going to look at your body language to see, like, is this person a threat? He ain't no threat.
Not zero. He didn't flinch or nothing. He didn't even know what was going on.
I mean, the way that he took him to the ground, man, you didn't have to do all of that. Right?
Mhm.
I didn't
Steve, I think it's Blake. He was a tennis player. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was at the one going to the tennis match. Waiting for actually a car to pick him up. Arthur Ashe's thing. But see, that's what propelled him into activism too. You know that, right?
Right, and look at it this way. Would he have done? And I'm thankful that he's doing it now. I'm thankful.
Right.
But my question is, damn, all right. So if that didn't happen to you, man, would you be advocating?
Probably not.
Probably not. But I'm thankful that we have you now, because I mean that just happens in everybody's life, right? Something significant happens in your life, and then you do something different. So I'm glad he did step up. You know.
Yes. I just know I do things like that, man, because I always try to be to other kids or young people what I needed in my life when I was growing up, bro.
That's it.
You know, one of the greatest days in history for African American men, I believe, was October 16th, 1995, Washington, D.C., the Million Man March. It was
I was
reported,
there.
it was reported that there was over a million. It was reported there was no violence. Brothers were shaking hands, hugging one another, taking pictures.
Laying down in the grass, not a care in the world, man. Nobody looted, nobody robbed. It was one of those days, a little chilly in the morning, but as the day went on, literally, people didn't mean mug people. People ain't. I'm being honest with you. It was that thing that, you know how you feel something from the ancestors and something in your spirit, that thing where I'm home, where I feel like when you go to Trinidad, right, bro? Right? You know that feeling you get, like that breath. That's how we felt that day in 1995 at the Million Man March.
So in terms of solutions, in terms of trying to get us to love one another, stop the violence. People always say, "What's the solution? What's the solution?" So I mean, I use the Million Man March as an example because it was all love. So how can we keep that same spirit 24 hours, 365 days a year? Go ahead, Brian.
I'm gonna say two things. One, first, you have to be that. Right? You have to know you. I know for me, I'm working on myself. I'm reading a book called The Four Agreements. You know, be impeccable with your words, never assume, don't take anything personal, always do your best, right? And I'm also reading the book called Permission to Feel, right? Because when I get these feelings, I want to be able to de-escalate myself.
Absolutely.
First, I got to work on me. And then once I'm working on me, now I got to start touching and challenging people around me. Right?
Absolutely.
And those people are, you know, my children, you know, my wife, you know, my mom, my dad, my brothers. I got to challenge the people around me. And then once I can start doing that, now I can start going out into the community and trying to do something else because I have some history of doing it. But the first thing is, it starts with, right? You can't expect something that you're not, right? And that's a process, right? That takes some time. But my advice is, first, just worry about you. I always talk about, you know, and I'll close out with this. So you have, so I used to be the police officer at the William Hicks Anderson Center. So in that 5th and Madison area, the properties that are there are the same that are in like Trolley Square.
Right.
Right. But why is it that, you know, we can't blame the white man because, you know, there's trash on the floor, right? The little kid that went to the corner store that had his Takis after he got done and there was a trash can right there, he just decided to throw it on the floor. Man, I'm checking you. Hey, man, I need you to pick that up. Right? I need you to put that in the trash can. And then I'm having a conversation with, hey, man, help me understand. Help me understand why the trash can is right there. It took the same amount of effort, right? You placed it on the ground instead of placing it in the trash can. And I want to know, man, hey, help me understand why.
But the difference is you did it out of love.
Right. And
you didn't yelling. You would say, hey, man, help me explain why and help them process the decision making.
Right. And then I'm going to take it a little bit deeper, right? Because it's always a black and white thing. So then I'll say, darn, man, if somebody that doesn't look like us rides through here, man, what they going to say? You giving them confirmation. Like, yeah, And rumors that I heard about those people, man, look at it. That little kid just bypassed the trash can to throw something on the floor. We can't give them anything. Right. So again, just to sum up my thing is just really first work on yourself. You need to be what you expect out there. You need to be that first. You know, to the community, challenge people. I always say, I always come humbly and respectfully. I'm gonna challenge everybody humbly and respectfully. Hey, Mr. Lorenzo, hey, help me understand why you made that decision. Right. Because I'm just you may be privy to some information that I didn't have, but I'm just trying, hey man, I'm trying to learn and grow.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. My number one thing, Omar, is this: we have to rebuild the village. If you remember the most powerful times that we had, and the grandmothers are getting younger, even if mommy and daddy didn't do right, big mama or someone there to say, hey, do your homework, boy. I'm gonna make sure you got something to eat. So when I talk about the village, I'm talking about getting the faith community involved. I don't care if it's Islam, I don't care if it's Christianity. There's no way, in my opinion, that you could be in a hood with all these problems and you have churches and you don't have a literacy program, you don't have an after school program, you don't have some kind of mentoring program. And I'm not talking about something where you got to pay people. You have people in your pews that are brilliant educators. You have people in your pews that may not be educated as academics, but they can mentor and spend time with a young person. We have to get back to that village instead of pointing fingers and saying them young people are out of control. They're out of control. They didn't raise themselves. We failed them. So when I'm talking about rebuilding that village, we have to establish a sense of pride back in our communities, because you're not going to tell me, and I tell people all the time, just because you live in a place they call the ghetto, right? I see Miss Betsy over there keep her flower bed tight, her yard tight. So that village where if I see you struggling, I'm going to pick you up. If I see you wilding, I'm going to put you back in your place. But we have, respectfully, but we have to recreate that village again. And I think that's what's missing in our communities, Omar, is that village. People who really simply care, not people who just want to be on TV, not people who want to be famous. I'm talking about people who put the work in day to day to go into these communities and go, hey, young brother, there's a better way. Hey, young sister, there's a better way. Hey, so-and-so, you're getting out of prison. Let me show you how this thing's done. Let me set a group up to tell you how to deal and navigate probation. Mm-hmm. How to answer the questions when it comes to employment or a job. And you start building that trust. And if you can get these young people to think for a second, instead of being so impulsive, you're changing their life. Simply because where I would wild out and pull a trigger, I'm going to go talk to Mr. Alleyne now, because you know what? I know he's going to give me the right information. So we have to build that village, recreate that village again, man. We become so separated and splintered that I think we are our people, but we're not of our people.
Right. And so my last question for this evening, we got the case with George Floyd, we had the Rodney King. Wow, is this ever going to stop? How can incidents like this with the police end? I mean, is there a solution? I don't know, because it seems like every so often cases like this keep coming up. We protest, we demonstrate, and then several years later, here we go again.
I know for me, just one thing that I'm going to add is that, and this is something I say often, I always try to create an environment where all the stereotypes don't exist. So the one that I always bring up is I have about 5 to 8, male friends that I'm very close with. So the stereotype of the, African-American male, not being a good father, or, you've been to jail, and, that whole narrative, it doesn't exist within our circle. Right. So the conversations that we have and I'll be, completely transparent, on a Friday night, we may get our drinks. Well, we may rotate houses. Right. And we have conversations on how we can be better. Right. I might get checked on the way that I spoke to my wife that I didn't know appeared disrespectful. But one of my boys might be like, yo, B, man, I ain't like the way you talk to Wendy, man. It just didn't come out right. And I might be like, damn, my fault. That's not what I intended. Right. But we're doing that while we're having a drink.
But what do you do that, right? What you did was you created a village, right?
Right, exactly.
A village of trust, because anybody else come to you and tell you, be the way you talk to Winnie, like, man, mind your business.
Right.
But because you built that village and trust, that trust plus challenge equals change. Because guess what? Sometimes I don't see my shit. Excuse my
Right.
language, right? So I need to be checked on that. But I expect you to do it in a respectful manner. So Omar, it's critically important, man, that we start getting back into our communities. We can no longer say it's someone else's problem because we are the help. No help's coming. We are the help. We are the help. I'm being honest with you.
Yep.
If we ain't doing it, nobody gonna do it.
Right.
Right. Exactly. All right, you gentlemen have any upcoming programs, any events you want to share with those in our audience?
One thing that I'll share is with Project New Start right now, we're located on the Widener Law School campus. Even though we didn't have a spring session and we're not sure what's going to happen for the fall, we are doing a remote opportunity with residents of the Plummer Community Center,
Okay.
Corrections Community Center. And what we're actually doing is reading the book, The Four Agreements. And the sessions are unbelievable. In addition to that, I also work at, it's called the Teen Warehouse. It's a part of Reach Riverside. And we have some great things going on in there. Again, just building teams up and teens up. And the conversation that we're having here, those are the same conversations we're having with those teens. And Mr. Lorenzo, something that you had mentioned that's close to me is, I try to be to them what I know I needed.
Yep.
Right. So I'm trying to get you information. I'm trying to make you feel empowered. And I'm trying to say, hey, man, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Because I want to help you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Right. And something even as extreme, right? If you like guns, right? All I'm saying is just wait until you're of age and then we can apply for the carry concealed deadly weapon license and now you're good. Right. Even in extreme, man, I got this little fetish. I like to, I like to shoot people. I like to kill. Man, listen, you can go to the military. You get awarded for that kind of stuff, right? Put yourself in the right environment where it's okay. So again, for me, Project New Start, we're doing our remote learning. It's called the Teen Warehouse. We're not officially open yet, but we are doing remote learning for teens. But again,
contact, email, phone number, people can contact me.
Well, I'll just give my number. I'll give out my personal number. My personal number is 302-685-5040. Again, 302-685-5040. If you need any information on Project New Start or the Teen Warehouse, please feel free to give me a call.
We'll be linking up, man. I want to partner with you and do some things, okay? Because everything you say, and I know you guys can get tired of me saying it, but everything you talked about was building that village of accountability, right? The Teen Warehouse, the reentry program. You're building a village of people that says, I'm going to hold you accountable, but I'm also lift you up, pull you up when you fall. So I'm interested in partnering with that. Omar, we don't have a lot planned right now because COVID has really knocked us down a little bit.
Right.
With me still being employed, a lot of my time right now is being spent at work.
Okay.
But I will. You guys follow me on Facebook, Lorenzo Hopkins. You'll see me there. You follow the Brown Eye Perspective. You'll see a lot of stuff we're doing. So just stay tuned, man. I mean, let's link up because if you're doing it, we do it together. We touch more people.
Right. I'm with it.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you both. This is your first time being a guest on my particular program. You guys are both excellent. We got to do this again.
Absolutely, brother. Look, when the cause is righteous, I'm there, man.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you next time. I'd like to thank those for watching on Facebook Live. We're going to do this again sometime. Thank you. God bless. Have a safe and blessed week.
Take care.
Stay up, good people. Stay up.
All right. Okay, Puz. That's great, man. Appreciate it. Oh, man, that was awesome. I was Michelle was in there, man. We had a real good conversation. Oh, man, I couldn't hear everybody. Okay.